Believe it or not, but this is the refreshed Generation 2 Rivian R1S. Yes, it pretty much looks exactly the same as the first generation, but there's actually quite a lot that has changed here. Mostly underneath the hood, some small fascia differences, and some cost-cutting exercises in the interior. Today, we are going to be taking this customer-delivered R1S Gen 2 on our full build quality analysis. We're going to be talking about the exterior fit and finish, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of panels on here that need some massaging, to say the least. We'll also jump inside, talk about the new interior. This is a dual motor max pack, so a lot of people have been really anxious to hear about the new trims with Rivian. Basically, is the base one truly base, or are you still getting a very premium experience? So welcome back to another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Let's jump into it. Please understand with this video that this build quality analysis series, these videos get really long. I like to go into in-depth detail, looking at every single little component we can. And yes, these videos do get very nitpicky. I'll just give you a forewarning here. If you don't like nitpicking, this video is not for you. This is really for those enthusiasts who care how their vehicles are actually built. And what I've seen from a lot of my customers that bring their vehicles in to get detailed here is that they actually do really care about this stuff. Now, I've already made a video with the Gen 2 R1S in a build quality analysis, but honestly, there was a few flaws with that video in my personal opinion. Number one, we did it in a parking lot at a charger. It was very rushed, very hard to do, and now I have some time to really go through everything, measure the differences between the panels, and really give you my thoughts on the Gen 2. The other issue with that video, I would say, was that we had a press delivered vehicle. So that was not a customer representative car that you would go pick up like this customer did with his Gen 2 R1S. So I really hope you enjoy this. Let's jump into it, starting with exterior fit and finish. I got the impression from my customer when I picked this up at his house today that he was ever so slightly disappointed with the build quality and fit and finish of his brand new Gen 2 R1S. And the reason behind that is when he went to pick this car up just about 3 weeks ago now, there were actually 2 or 3 dents. I can't remember, but there were 2 or 3 dents in his brand new R1S. Now, the nice thing about this is he immediately put in a service ticket with Rivian. They rectified all of that, and he was pretty happy with that experience. But as you may be able to tell, there are some very large panel gaps around here. There's also areas like this that the door is actually contacting this front fender. So we're going to dive into all of this. Now, I have covered Rivian quite extensively here as terms of build quality analysis, detail videos. I've done so darn many of these now. And I also quite understand how times have changed with Rivian. It very much felt like early on Rivian R1Ts were almost hand built. They were really checking over everything. And then once the R1S came out, it seems like they were trying to ramp up production, and I was starting to see quite a few issues with quite a few of their trucks. So with this video, again, I'm going to touch on a few small little things that we may have missed in the first video, but I'll point out a couple of things I see along here, such as the new front and rear tail lights, as well as some small things inside that have actually changed for cost savings, which may not be the worst thing ever. So let's start here on the large front hood. This is an area that I think Rivian has really struggled with. And the reason being is this is a totally powered front frunk, and I think the car was sleeping right there. That's one thing with Rivian, that they always seem to fall asleep, and really when you go to wake them up, it does take a few minutes here. Now, the issue that I've seen with this front trunk area is, as you can see, it is of course powered by these 2 struts on either side. This is also an extremely heavy hood, and I think one of the issues Rivian runs into with this is that by pushing up all of that weight up and down, it really puts a lot of tension on all of the components. My brother-in-law picked up a Gen 1 R1S, and when it came in, I was like, dude, I really want to do a build quality analysis. This thing seems like it's really dialed in. The next week, he took it up to the mountains, parked on an incline, and his entire hood actually sunk down on one side. So let's see how this is actually fitting here. Close it up. Smooth actuation. I did hear a little bit of a squeak back there. It could be that I just rinsed this car off, so can't say too much about that. One thing that I'm really liking here is how much better this actually lines up. 9 times out of 10 on all of the Rivians I've really worked on, this piece is kind of sticking out a little bit more, creating a large gap. Now I will say this doesn't fit perfectly here. As you can see, my finger kind of goes up once it gets to this panel, but I would say that's pretty much in tolerance there. This side looks a little bit worse. As you can see, that's quite a big jump on there. So already seeing that this hood isn't fully dialed in. Another area that I've seen quite a few issues with is this kind of round section around this kind of headlight housing here compared to the hood. Very cool design that Rivian does here, kind of cutting that out. I know this is a controversial front end, but this actually looks pretty darn decent all the way around. What about this side? I would say very similar. This fits pretty nice all the way through. Looking at the new light bar here, nice, very smooth, accurate tolerance is there. Very impressed by that. Now, one thing that's changed up here with the light bar and the new lights is you have this new section. This is the easiest way to tell that it is a Gen 2 R1S. They've also taken the blinkers out of this housing up here and mounted them down there. Moving here to the front trunk hood, I want to see how this all fits, and actually feels pretty darn flush, especially up here. As I move farther back, feeling very flush, and then you'll see this kind of opens up as you get back here. Now I will say this is notoriously where these hoods start to sink, is this particular area. We'll check on the other side, but what I notice here is that it's sitting slightly lower, and there is a reasonably large gap there. I would say that's right about 6 millimeters. Now, traditionally what I am kind of looking for, and I think what a lot of people consider kind of the ideal tolerances between these, is right around 4 millimeters. Now, I don't expect every single car to be perfect, but I do think that's a nice kind of industry standard that a lot of folks go. Now, tolerances are going to be tighter from fender to bumper here, and I think that's totally acceptable. But for opening doors and things like that, the whole reason we want to have tolerance, but them to be even, is so that we don't run into stuff like this. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if I look up here, you can see this is smaller than 5 millimeters of tolerance. It's a little hard to get this in here. I'd say it's right between 4 and 5. So it's slightly off there, but to me, when I walk up to this, this definitely looks a little bit larger, and it's definitely sunken in ever so slightly. Moving to the driver's side over here, I can already tell you this feels great here until you get up here and the hood has already sank on this one. Now, it may have came out of the factory like this, but again, this is where my brother-in-law's R1S really kind of took a dive, pun intended there, in his hood. If I move my finger over this, you can see it's quite a large gap. Let me see if I can give you, yeah, you can really see it there. These should be balanced as good as possible, but already starting to sink there. Now, moving back around the front, we of course have our charge port here. Actually, in all honesty, this looks pretty decent up top in terms of tolerances, but you'll notice it's a lot tighter right down here, especially on this edge. Now, in my personal opinion, I think Rivian's charge port door is very overcomplicated. Let's see if it'll unlock here. No, it hasn't. Okay, so it's fallen asleep yet again. So let's grab this door handle. Hate these door handles. We'll talk about that soon. So the truck fell asleep there, and you'll notice these door handles are electronic now, and yeah, not mechanical. So that's why when I went to open it the first time, didn't unlock. Now we should be able to open this. So here's one of the issues I have with their charge port. That to me does not feel premium at all. Now what has changed is that you can actually kind of twist this, but I have actually seen these charge port doors fall out, and in Gen 2 they have not fixed that. Now we have a little bit different design in here to the last charge port. No longer have the light. This is your eject button, but this is actually very nice in here. This is like a rubber piece on there, and it actually feels very nice, and you can tell that it's really keeping the water out of your DC pins. It also does look to me like the J1772 is a new design in there. Let's close this up here and continue on. Really cool actuation there. I just think that Rivian is going to struggle with these, especially once we get a few years into the future. Once these start to wear out, I really am not a huge fan of overly complicated charge port doors. Now on the front end here, all is slightly different because, again, as we said, our turn signals are down here, no longer have the front fog lights. We actually have matrix function in here, which is pretty awesome. Now, I have always very much praised Rivian for this front end because 9 times out of 10, they all fit amazingly well. Look at the tolerance all of the way down here. It's absolutely perfect all the way down. I wish they could just translate this to the rest of the truck. This truck also, I should have mentioned, does have the kind of stealth or dark out package, which changes your tow hooks here, which are now optional, as well as this whole front kind of metal, I don't want to call it a crash bar, but kind of like a skid plate. Now, I have to tell you, I very much think this is a much higher quality material than they've been using in the past. This all feels very nice, and this feels really good as well. I would see trucks come out of the factory with kind of the chrome looking version that really had some shiny areas, some dull spots on it, and I didn't really love all of that down there, but I think this looks extremely nice in this particular stealth pack. Now looking over here, just want to continue here on the front bumper. This looks all really good right here, all very tight tolerances. This fits amazingly nice all the way through. I have pretty much zero complaints. Headlights also look like they fit really well. This is really good stuff in here all the way throughout the bumper. I want to see if these are a little loose. This had been an area on Rivians that some of these weren't necessarily clipped in, even from brand new. Wow. That looks really good. So honestly, the whole lower bit looks excellent. Very good job there, Rivian. I would say this charge port door needs to just come up a little bit. As you can see, this line doesn't really fit all the way through. If it comes up a little bit, that's dialed in. So the first big issue I really have with the front end here is just the front trunk. Moving down the driver's side fender here, I gotta say the tolerances here look fantastic. No more bulging. Wow, they have added some extra support in here. I remember the days on the early R1s that you could basically pull this out and it would kind of turn this whole thing. That feels a lot higher quality there. Now, the tolerances here on this plastic molding into the body, I would say this could get tucked in just like that and it'd be next to near perfect. You can see following this all the way down looks extremely good. Now in this particular area, there's actually a lot that has changed. So in this molding, there used to be kind of your blind spot monitoring camera down here. That has all now moved into the new, very sleek looking mirror with a lot of tech in this thing. This mirror has not one, not two, but 3 cameras in it now. And I do have to say the new cameras look pretty darn incredible. But this new mirror has a ton of technology packed into this thing. And I think, holy smokes, if you smack this thing, this has got to be a very expensive bad boy to replace. But I got to say, it does look very sleek, very redesigned. So I'm anxious to actually get polishing on all of this piano black plastic because Rivian has had some that's a little tricky to polish from a professional detailing sense. So that's looking pretty darn cool. Now, fender to door alignment here. First thing I'm going to note, the fender definitely sticks up compared to the door, as well as down here. You can really see it down here. One thing I do like though, the driver's side at least, you can follow that all the way up, looks very tight. Even up here, really tight tolerances in there. Let's see if I can get a quick little reading. That is under 3 millimeters there. Down here is just about 4.5 millimeters. So slightly off, it definitely does taper up there. But honestly, looking at it here, I think it looks pretty good until you get down here. Now, Rivian has always struggled with their plastic molding. I'm not sure if it's a supplier issue, if it's how they install them, if it's the plastic clips that hold them in. I don't know what it is, but this gap, holy smokes, your eyes just go immediately to it. And that is 8.5 millimeters, over, in my opinion, double what it actually should be. Now, the other thing you notice here, this piece is actually sitting over this one in here. So these are 2 different pieces of plastic that come together. Normally this is an even seam, but as you can see here, it's got a raised lip on it. And I don't think that's how they intended it to actually fit. Now, if I take a tolerance up here, you can see it's right about 6.5 millimeters. And again, down here, more in the 8.5 region. So I would say this doesn't fit that well. It actually fits pretty even here, but man, that gap is extremely large. We do have the new stealthed out Rivian emblem on the side, which I think looks extremely nice. I want to look down here. This is all fitting extremely well all the way through there. Again, until you get to this big gap here. Now look at this door here. When you're just sitting here looking at this, you can see very tight tolerances here in the middle, opens up at the bottom, opens up at top, and then you have this massive gap. So let's try and get you a reading in here. That is under 3 millimeters there. So I would say that's pretty tight. I would say probably the door could slightly go over a little bit. Let's check down here. Still under 3 millimeters. Down here, right at 6 millimeters. I can't tell because it's so far off. Look at how off that panel is. I mean, yeah, that is not ideal. And this is something my customer actually pointed out to me. He said, you know, I've had Teslas for quite a few years, and honestly, I'm slightly disappointed in the build quality here. He had a few dents in it. He was showing me some other things around the truck here, and he just like, I kind of am surprised, in all honesty, how many little things are slightly wrong with this. So this is why I wanted to make a video on this. Hopefully Rivian watches this and understands that there are people out there who do care about this stuff. I'm going to wait to give my entire thing on these absolutely terrible door handles until we get to the other side. Wait for a little bit of a rant on that. But honestly, there are some good things going on over here. Look at this molding all the way down. This is actually fitting pretty good. I will say a little bit larger of a gap. This should line up with the door. The tricky thing with how Rivian's designed this, it doesn't have a chance to come over this way like a traditional car that this would carry out. So I think what they could probably do is this one needs to come over, but that to me almost looks like a manufacturing mistake. You can see it should fit more flush with this. Now this all looks extremely good all the way up. Great tolerances there. This looks pretty darn good here, ever so slightly off, but I would say this looks actually really, really good. All of this up here, man, actually pretty darn impressive. Again, we have this new stealth gray molding here. This all looks very nice, very high quality in there. So very good and glad to see that. Moving down here, all the tolerances looking pretty awesome. This area is pretty good. Now up here you can see there is this kind of weird piece that's sticking out, and I can actually push this in. Holy cow, it actually moves quite a bit. I know most people aren't going to be sitting here pushing on that, but definitely doesn't, almost seems slightly loose. Let's dig into this a little bit more and see what's going on here. Yeah, that is definitely a little loose to me. So I'd like to see that sitting in there a little bit nicer and that tolerance to be slightly better. He has had issues with this door. I closed that reasonably hard, and as you can see, you really have to give it a thud there. That's been a thing with Rivian. I'm not sure that's a bad thing to have a door. You kind of have to give some muscle into it. He said the only issue with this is his kiddos try and get, you know, out of the car. They go to close the door and the doors are always open. So that could be a thing there. This has been an area, yet again, with plastics Rivian has struggled with. This is an area I think they may have, I say that as I'm literally pulling this entire piece out, but I've looked at some other ones and they're extremely tight there. The early generation ones, you could really move that. I'm not sure why this side is like that. We'll talk about it on the other side as well. One thing you're gonna notice, that doesn't fit all that well either. But I will say this door looks pretty darn good here. Even the tolerances up here, man, that looks pretty good. Whoa, is that piece in? I'm surprised how many things can move on here. Like this is rock solid and that is just like loosey-goosey. This is all loose as well. That whole piece back here, until you get to right here. So there's got to be a clip or a little thing holding that in. Down here, not so much. Okay, nonetheless, this rear glass window, looking around here, this looks like it fits pretty darn well. I have seen some that are a little bit off, but this one looks pretty good. This plastic molding though, very nice, extremely nice, and this even better. This is an area that I am so glad they have improved on. Maybe from my videos, I don't know, but I've seen a lot of this molding have like a huge gap to where it's sitting here, but man, look at how tight that is. Even down here, very, very nice. So that's good to see there. This actually has some clips on it. I've actually taken these off before, but man, props to Rivian. That looks pretty darn good. Moving back here, now this is an area, yet again, Rivian has struggled on, but I'm glad to see some nice improvements here. This rear cap, as I kind of call it, this molded piece of plastic, in my impression, I've never seen an R1S that fits perfectly, but dang, this one is sure getting a little bit closer. Now, what I mean by that is you have these horns up here. Now, in my impression, if you're going to make a distinct body line like that, they should really match, because the first thing you see is that piece sticking up there. But this one actually, in all honesty, looks better than 99% of them I've seen. This side looks better here, but then you can see this one sticks out a little bit. So it's just those little things, like if you got that dialed, man, this whole rear end would look so much better. Now you can see the gapping up here. This is all plastic in here, or this piece is metal up here. So you can see the plastic is actually warping, fits better there, big gap there. And then as you move on, less of a gap down there. So still not perfect, but I will say it does seem slightly improved. Now, this whole rear end here has really been moving around. I've had quite a few of these R1Ss that these actually start contacting each other. The tolerances look pretty reasonable here. We'll say it sits in a little bit, as you can see this kind of sitting out, but this gapping looks pretty darn good. This gapping looks good. What doesn't look good though to me is the new light bar. And as you can see over here, let's take a quick measurement. Just about 5 millimeters there. So we move to this side. Yeah, 8 millimeters. So that's 3 millimeters off. This whole light bar just needs to do that. So I think that's something that could be fixed in service. Will it be fixed? I'm not sure, but I think that would be a pretty easy fix there. Tolerances back here, again, I would say down here look pretty good. The lower part's just sticking out. The top is just kind of pushed in a little bit. New Rivian emblems back here, of course, and their stealth. It also looks pretty cool with the R1S badge. And this whole piece that used to be chrome is now kind of this stealth smoked out look. I think it looks extremely nice. Taillights here fit really good on this particular side. That looks great all the way through. Again, tolerances here, bang on. That looks incredible. This looks incredible. Very nice job there. Now this side is the original side that I went in, and you can see this piece is like, almost feels like it's glued on there. It's pushed in really nice. So the driver's side seems a little loose to me. Now on this side, okay, it's not bad, but what you'll notice is you have this gap here. If this twists, that fits a lot better up there. So I just wish that could be like that, but then you have this gap here. So again, I think their plastic molding still needs quite a bit of work. It doesn't seem like it really fits that well to me. I don't know what's going on there, if it's a supplier issue, if it's a Rivian install issue, don't exactly know, but I think they do need to solve that a little better. Now let's look at this side. The tolerances here look better. Definitely not perfect, to say the least. This whole piece, very loose as well. If I push in on this, you can just see the whole, yeah, like this thing barely feels like it's in. Is that just gonna fly off the truck here while you're going down the highway? Look at the movement in that. Holy cow. Okay, that's even tighter than the other side. This is rock solid. So just some weird things. I know this is nitpicky, but I think a lot of people do care about this stuff. Are you not gonna be, I mean, you're not gonna be pushing on this, but weird stuff like this particular area, I think definitely needs to get dialed a little bit better. Let's take some measurements here on this door. Under 3 millimeters there. Just over, that's almost 3.5 up there, or down there, I should say, and about 3.5 there as well. So I would say, honestly, this looks okay. This line fits reasonably well. Does the door stick out ever so slightly? Yes, I don't think most people are gonna see that. Moving down the side here is where we really start getting into some serious issues. Look at the gap there versus here. Let's quickly take a measurement. Over 8.5, almost 9 millimeters. And this down here is under 5, just over 5. Okay, so that's right about, yeah, 5.25 millimeters there. So almost 3 millimeters difference between those gaps. And as you can see, look how far that sticks out. What the heck? That's not okay. Don't love that at all. This door is definitely sucked in a little bit compared to down here. Again, when you have hard body lines like this, you really need to make sure these are dialed, because people can definitely start to notice that your doors aren't aligned there. This area up here though is looking reasonably good until you get to this area. You can see that plastic trim sticking out a little bit. And the other thing I notice is this is actually sucked in a little bit. So again, I think the whole door needs to come out. Now, one thing I am noticing, this gap here looks pretty darn large, especially compared to the other side. That is over, I'm trying to read it now, 6.5 millimeters. I just want to take a difference for over here, because I feel like this side fit a heck of a lot better. And yeah, you can see how much tighter the tolerances are, like under 3 millimeters there. So again, it's just side to side. Things aren't really lining up perfect. Is that the end of the world? I don't know. That's for you going to purchase a brand new $80,000+ rig. Up here, looking pretty darn good. One thing I'm noticing, this trim, again, doesn't really even feel like it's totally in. It's literally touching up here and kind of sitting over. Let me try and get you an angle there. That just needs to get kind of pushed down as I'm pushing down with my other hand here. Yeah, doesn't fit the greatest there. Now, this door is an issue, and I've seen this, I don't know why, only on the passenger side, but there's some issues here. Let me pop this open. Look how tight that is. So it's literally already self-clearance there. You may be able to see paint is literally missing there. And this side, the freaking door is touching the fender. Come on, Rivian. Like, seriously, that is not acceptable for an $80,000 rig. I don't care if it's a $20,000 rig. That is not acceptable in my impression. Pretty darn bad. Up here, you can see we have quite a large gap, over 5.5 millimeters. Down here is almost touching. Like, there is nothing there. Look at that. Holy smokes. So that line is definitely not right. And again, to have paint just coming off a brand new $80,000+ rig because your doors don't fit is not ideal. Now, I will say, this fits pretty good down here. This is looking a lot better, a lot tighter tolerances. Why can't you do that back there? Like, for real, what the heck? And then you also see this piece of plastic is sitting over that one. I don't know, maybe this is a Gen 2 thing. Then you move up here. Look at how warped this plastic is. Are these clips not pushed in, or are they broken? What the heck? You can literally see the clip right there and right there. I don't think that's how this is supposed to be. But you can see a bulge here, kind of indents, and a bulge there. Not ideal, to say the least. So, last thing I want to rant about the exterior, the new door handles. Rivian. I don't know why Rivian decided to completely redesign their new door handles. There's some different functionality with it. It may be due to safety. It may be a little bit of cost cutting. I'm not exactly sure. But I have to tell you, there's something weird going on here. So when I got in this truck this morning, went to open the door handle, I'm like, of course, Gen 2 R1S door handle here. They squeak, they rattle, they sound terrible. I've since washed this car. It's now warmer in the day. They don't squeak. What the heck? Okay, so maybe the case of the Gen 2 R1S is you need to get some WD-40 or some sort of grease in there and just spray the heck out of it, or just wash your truck all the time and then your door handles don't squeak. Let's go to all of these. Nope, doesn't squeak. The interesting thing with these door handles is that they are now not mechanical. They are fully electronic, so that inside you actually have a button. Nope, that sounds fine. And that sounds fine. So let me overlay the clip of the press R1S Gen 2 we had here so that you can hear the difference between this. Be curious to see if this comes back as everything dries out. Over here, the Generation 1 R1S. You grab the door handle, great mechanical feel. Close the door, nice thud in there. Then you come over here and you have this electronic controlled door handle. And first off, doesn't sound great, Jordan. What do you think?
No, that's pretty bad.
Okay, let's close this too and hear this.
It just sounds like there's a lot of
Yikes.
space and things, and maybe the added electronics are like almost sounds like the added electronics are bouncing.
Yeah, it's just like they're not even bolted in, I would say. I mean, just for a quick comparison here.
Ugh. It's a weird ASMR thing we got going on here.
I can't get over that. The door handles are a huge detractor for me, and I'm surprised that they went to these because I think most people, Kyle, I know, was like, Rivian door handles are the best. You just come in here, you grab them, it's like a nice handshake, and you open them. And now you kind of feel this half a second delay before the door opens, and then you shut it, and it just rattles. The back doors actually sound quite good compared to the front. So honestly, my whole rant about the door handles here is kind of invalid because they actually sound pretty good to hear. Honestly, I would not mind these door handles if they were like this. You actually get a nice mechanical sound in here. It feels pretty nice. It is weird to me though when the truck falls asleep, very similar to like the front opening button underneath there, that you kind of have to tap it a few times. You guys saw that. Went to grab this and it didn't react right away because the truck was asleep. But honestly, I think that's pretty darn okay. Let's get some door shut noises because I know on the press version, again, the other Gen 2 R1S that we did, the door rattled like crazy when you closed them. A little rattle, but not bad. Honestly, I wouldn't say bad at all. I heard maybe a little rattle up here. Let's check the back doors. Wow, actually sounds pretty darn good. Almost get this kind of mechanical sound in there. Again, this is one thing, I always think it's funny, but doors to me are very important, not only how they open, but how they close. When you're coming up to a vehicle, that is your first interaction you're having with it, grabbing a door handle. And if it feels terrible, I feel like it's kind of one of those things you're like, ooh, is this actually premium or not? Like if you open up, let's just say like a Nissan Leaf door compared to this, it feels very light, feels very tinny, doesn't kind of show that it's a very premium vehicle. You go to something like a G-Wagon, they literally engineer the doors to sound and feel like you're closing and opening a gun or something similar. So it's pretty funny. Close that, that sounds great. Let's try this one as well. Sounds great. Okay, so no more on the door handles. Maybe this is the way to do it. I really, honestly, the first time I saw these, I was like, just spray some WD-40 or some other lubricant in there, and I think they'll be a lot better. And I would definitely say that they feel and sound better, at least on this customer version that I just washed. So next, let's move into the interior, talk about a few small changes, and see, does this interior still feel premium or not? So I think we've honestly gone through most of the bad, and it really comes down to exterior fit and finish. I have long praised Rivian for their interiors because in my impression, they make one of, if not the best interiors in the entire car industry. Everything feels nice. The materials are amazing. The fit and finish is truly next level, especially when you're paying 80 grand for a car. Now, I recently just watched a video with the guys over from Monroe, and they did a teardown on the interior, talking about cost savings here and there and the different changes on Gen 2 R1S. There's some weird, interesting things that they were talking about. I definitely think you should go check that video out. I'll leave it in the link in the description below. You know, talking about the wood and why the grain here may not match exactly up here and why they have to kind of put slits in these areas. Thought it was a very fascinating video. I mean, just small things that most people don't notice. This entire piece down here is new in the Gen 2. What I mean by that is this is all plastic now. This actually used to be plastic that was painted over, and one thing I would see on a lot of Rivians is this area, basically you can see it's been kicked a few times, would start to wear the paint off. It was almost this light gray color there, and they have saved money in making this just a molded plastic piece. So I think that's pretty darn interesting. But again, I've really praised Rivian for their interior because I'm blown away with the material that they use, especially here on the seats. Now, one interesting thing that I had a question about, Somebody leave it in the comment section below if you know. But the Monroe guys believe that they have had 2 different vegan leather materials in here, because the earlier ones, you could press this and it would look like leather. Now, typically when you press into leather, you get these very fine spiderwebby cracks. And the easiest way to tell that it's synthetic is you push in on it and it doesn't have any of those cracks. So they feel like this material has changed. Now, of course, I have just been blown away with this. So I don't know how this is going to hold up, if it has changed, or maybe that was very early trucks. I'm not exactly sure, but just wanted to note that. But the Rivian interior is still honestly as amazing as ever. I think the material selection in here is incredible. Everything you touch feels premium, but it's also rugged and wearable. It was really funny. I made a tweet one day, and RJ, of course, CEO of Rivian, actually ended up retweeting that and saying that Rivian spends a lot of time designing, manufacturing, and selecting all of their materials for the high use case of wear. You know, if you have dogs in here, if you have kids in here, if you're off-roading, if you're camping, and also making it luxurious. So honestly, huge props to them on that. Now, a few things that I would like to see maybe in Gen 3. I would like to see a new material of this. The whole reason being, every single Rivian looks like this because there's fingerprints all over this material. You basically have a small Cybertruck in here. It very much feels like stainless steel. It's definitely plastic that is kind of this painted chrome look, but I mean, the fingerprints that you get in here are crazy. Now, of course, you're not always touching the dash here, but this is an area you interact with a lot. Now, a new thing that has changed in here is this new divider for your wireless phone chargers. Weird things going on here. I was driving up here, had my phone here. There is apparently something with the Gen 2 R1Ss. I don't know if it's like an RFID scanner. Somebody, yet again, will let me know in the comment section, but it brings up your Apple Wallet like it's trying to charge you for a subscription or something. I don't know, maybe to make your accent lights something different. Kia EV9 there. But yeah, it's really strange. You set your phone there to charge it or whatever, and all of a sudden it's bringing up your Apple Pay. It's really, really odd. But I don't think this has totally solved phones moving about, because if you launch it hard, it goes backwards. If you brake hard, it goes forwards. And it's still got to be in kind of a precise area there. So they kind of went a little bit farther, but then kind of still missed. The other weird thing I'm noticing, this doesn't really fit all that well. Like crumbs and stuff are definitely going to get down there. That's very weird, because look at the tolerances here and here. It just seems very strange to me. One thing, again, that I'd like to see next generation different is these buttons. Oh, and they work this time. What the heck? Well, Rivian surprising me. Most of the time you press it just like that, and it takes a while. Okay, so maybe they didn't fix that. Why did this one go so quickly? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they open, sometimes they don't open. It's very strange, but okay, maybe they've improved that, but I just showed you a couple times I pressed that and it didn't actually fix it. Other things here in the interior, I want to show you the cameras. Pop open the cameras here. Man, are they seriously high quality. You can see the 360 cam in here, and dang, the level of detail is amazing. This is the dog's water bowl over here. You can see all of this stuff up here. Pretty insane what you can actually see from here. If you go to the backup view, you can see Kyle Connor's Twizy back here. Pretty darn impressed with this. I'm not going to dive into software. I'll tell you, if you're looking for more software information, go check out Out of Spec Reviews. We've been extremely impressed with Rivian software. They keep updating it, keeps getting better. So huge shout out to Rivian for making actually pretty unbelievable software, even compared to Tesla. Now, a lot of things over here look exactly the same. Amazing camera quality, a great steering wheel. My only issue that I have with this is I don't love this natural wood grain here. My hands, of course, being a detailer, do get dry over the winter periods. I don't use a lot of lotion on my hands because I don't want to get my steering wheel nasty. And this always just, has a weird feel to it, so I don't love having the wood there. Really like it here, and they've actually done a pretty decent job here on the corners. I used to say that they were cracked. Monroe, of course, in their teardown was talking about how they actually have to cut it there in order for it to fit to make that bend, because this is a natural piece of wood. It's very impressive that they're still doing this, and it looks so high quality. The only thing I'll tell you is I've had a few customers chip this, and it can be very hard to fix, and then to wipe it off with dust, you're just like tearing up microfibers, and if you use colored microfibers, they get stuck in the wood grain here. So it's a cool material, but I can't say I love it. Now there are options, of course, that you can get this leather basically up here instead of the wood, but I don't know, I kind of do really like the wood. So interesting things going on there. Now one thing that does seem different to me here, it may just be this truck. This is like shiny chrome. I've never seen this on a Gen 2. So you can see this is matte down here. This is like actually shiny. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'm not sure if that's a manufacturing defect or if they're all like that. I don't remember that in the last Gen 2 that we had. So in terms of Gen 2 R1S now, and I guess R1T as well, are I guess some features that you got standard on the original trucks and SUVs that you don't now get. Number one of those being no camp speaker down here. So this is now a little tray. Honestly, this is so much more useful than the speaker. I don't know how many people actually use that. If I had the truck, I would never use it, but I think that is nice to have down there. It does seem like kind of a small cubby for such a large center console there. I don't know. Let's open this up. Feels exactly the same as Gen 1. Not noticing any difference here. I would honestly say this thing is okay. It's a little flimsy there in all honesty, but I would say it's nice that it tucks away pretty darn good. Again, coming back here to the seat area, it's really funny. I see people look at Rivians and go, oh my God, their build quality is terrible. Look at that. The whole reason they did that is so you can move that bottom piece up there, and then you push it back down, and it goes back to perfectly smooth and even. So I really like that it actually, you can move the seat and that the plastic molding down there is looking good. One area that I would tell Rivian, please, 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 please fix is this thing. So this piece, you know, this is a rugged off-road vehicle that you're taking, especially here in Colorado. I mean, people off-road the heck out of these things. Every time you get out of a Rivian, you get dirt and little rocks and little pebbles on your shoes. You go to get in, they all go in here. You can see them in here. The only way to get those out is you have to pop this entire plastic piece out. You have to unscrew 4 screws in there and then clean it out and put it back together. I often have to do that on a lot of my Rivian customers' vehicles, and it's pretty darn annoying. Like, I just wish this was flat here. You don't need all this decoration in there. Drives me nuts. Let me show you the back one here, because I think this one, yeah. So little rocks and things like this, you literally can't get out, and you can't pick them out. They're just everywhere. I've already vacuumed this thing. Doesn't look like it over here, but I've already vacuumed this area, and they just get stuck in there, which is pretty darn annoying. Moving over here to the door, because there is some things that have changed here and not really for the better. So no longer do we have our mechanical boom pull to open the door. I believe this actually is, but it used to be that was the only way you open the door. Now this is how you get out of the vehicle. Is it better? No, I still like the first gen a little bit more. One area though, that every time you close that door, you feel that this like, not ideal there. Don't love that whatsoever. So that feels a little cheap and plasticky to me. I'm not sure that they've changed these plastics. They definitely don't feel the most premium in there, but I think overall it feels pretty good. One thing odd that I'm noticing here, these leather panels don't match this down here, which is a little strange. Now this matches exactly the seats, but this is totally a different color. Can you guys see that? I don't know, maybe I'm losing my mind, which I probably am, but definitely this seems darker black than the top sections, which is a little bit strange. I don't think it's bad, I just want to point that out. It's amazing to me how nice though this interior is. Like all this is soft touch of their vegan leather material, all of this, like it's just a high quality premium interior, minus that. Don't love that for sure. Jumping into the back seat here. Now, largely the same. We, of course, still have our 3-row SUV here with some of the heaviest seats probably in existence here. Now, of course, if you are a parent, having perforated seats is not ideal. You're going to see this kind of stuff all the time. Kids spilling ice cream, chocolate milk, whatever in the seats. So I would say, could maybe use some seat covers, especially if you have kids in here a long time. But I do think that's one of the negatives in having perforated seats. It's weird that they have perforated seats back here because you don't get AC seats. Do you? What? Okay, I'm totally wrong. No, you don't get AC seats. That's for the rear seats. Holy smokes. So now the rear seats get heated seats. The icon was so small I couldn't tell, but you now get rear heated seats in this. I didn't even know that was a new thing. So cool. But you saw a perforation here, especially with kids. I think this would be nice to have more of this material here, be better wearing. You wouldn't see stuff like this all the time. So that could be an issue for a few folks. Now, back here, these seats are just so hard to move. And I really think they need to rethink how these rear seats work. My brother-in-law actually ended up, he has 3 kiddos. He ended up pulling the other side second row out so that the kids were easier to get in and out. So let me just show you here. It's not that bad to basically get them in. So you press this one button here, boom, everything moves forward. Great. That's easy, great access back there. The issue though is this. So you go to push it back and then the seat's all the way forward and then you do this. And then you have to adjust this. It is just far too many steps, in my opinion. And the seat is rather heavy. So I'm thinking about a mom with a kid in one hand, with groceries in the other hand. The kids are trying to get in back there. She's trying to buckle in another kid. The seat could probably be an annoyance. So I do think they need to slightly work on that a little bit. One thing that has changed back here, you no longer have wood grain in this. I think it's totally acceptable. I don't think you need it there. And I think this looks just as nice. Everything else back here, in all honesty, feels pretty much the same to me. One thing I always see is this little guy here. A lot of people get very concerned about their center console armrest. Let me show you. So what happens here is, of course, these seats, you can adjust the height. So let's pretend we get the kiddos in here. Great. We pull this whole thing back. What the heck just happened? That's what they all do. And I've seen people post this on, like Rivian forums, like, holy crap, did I just break my armrest? But then you push this thing back and sit it where it should be, but it's still angled weird. It's a very strange implementation there. It just doesn't seem totally thought out in my impression. But honestly, those are the small little nitpicks I have with Rivian. I think the interior, they absolutely knock it out of the park. Let's hear this though. Yeah, still a little bit of plasticiness. Very much feels reminiscent to Mercedes' new EQ line, but I don't know. That's my thoughts here. I still think Rivian makes one of the best interiors out there. I do think small things like that can be a little bit of an annoyance. Let's open up the rear trunk here. I don't think much has changed. Always tricky to find that. Opens right up. Smooth actuation, very quick. I love having the split tailgate here. I think that's so incredibly useful. Fold this down. Boom, there you go. Now my customer did have an issue with his. I believe it to be, this little wire here was getting stuck and hung up, so you can actually see some scratches down there from it. They had to adjust this because it would click every time that he would close that up. So that's a little bit strange. Keep an eye on that, but I haven't seen that in any other ones. Could have just been a problem of one here. One thing that I did notice is this on the Gen 1, I don't remember this huge cavernous area in here to put a bunch of stuff. You can put, charging adapters back there, kids, whatever, not kids, kids treats, of course, and leashes back there if you have dogs. I don't know, my brain. Huge underfloor storage here, of course. Rivian really packages these cars nice. Now, again, I own a Kia EV9. I will tell you, interior space in the EV9 feels much larger, but these areas like back here underneath the floor and the front trunk, much smaller in the EV9. So more kind of comfort, I would say, for the passengers, but less storage space for sure. So let me give you my final thoughts here on the Rivian R1S Gen 2, and we'll make this a video. Let me give you my final thoughts and feelings here on the build quality of a customer delivered Gen 2 R1S. Let's start off with the good. The good, the interior is still incredible. Now, are there still a few things that I wish they would have fixed? Yes, and there's some things that they fixed that I'm not super pumped about. The interior grab handles, pretty poor quality in my opinion. The plastic feels a little cheap there. The creak you get when you kind of move that anytime you close the door, doesn't feel that nice. I really think having the mechanical door handles, especially inside as well, felt a lot more premium. The button, very similar to how Tesla does it, I think kind of brings the feel of the interior down. That's my opinion. A lot of people probably love it out there, but I really think Rivian has honestly nailed their interior. The way they have created a luxury interior that feels premium, that's rugged, that's durable, and that cleans up easy, for me is a huge win. All the materials in there, other than a few, are absolutely incredible. So I will say, I don't think the base model Gen 2 R1S really got a ton cheaper. In certain small areas, yes, but it honestly feels very similar to a quad motor of Gen 1. Now I'm anxious to see once Tri-Motor Ascend, Quad Motor Ascend come out with their new interiors. They have really cool materials in there, different seat backings, different floor mats, different leather options on there. I think it'll be really cool to check out. Now, part of the other good, there are some areas where Rivian is really striving to make these cars feel well built. And I can tell that they're actually paying attention to what customers want. Again, a lot of the exterior fit and finish on here, my customer pointed out to me. This is not me just going and nitpicking everything. Almost every single one of these areas, he pointed out to me. So I think the people who say nobody cares, that is such a false statement. I can't even begin to believe it. Now, some of the bad. The bad really comes down to the exterior, in all honesty. I can live with a lot of the interior stuff. And again, I think the interior is incredible in this. But a lot of the exterior fit and finish to me, I'm just sitting here scratching my head going, number one, how does this make it out of factory if they're doing quality control, which I do believe they are? And number two, how does this make it to a service center, get PDI'd, and then delivered to a customer? Stuff like this, when your door is literally touching another panel, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. I don't care how expensive the car is, whether it's a Nissan Leaf or a $250,000 Lucid Sapphire, your door should never be touching another panel on the car. That to me is absolutely ridiculous. Now, the less ridiculous stuff, but that I still think is not the greatest, is areas like this panel down here. This stuff that doesn't even close to fit. Like I could probably close my eyes and get it on there better than this is actually fitting. I think that kind of stuff really needs to get dialed in, especially for the price point they're asking. Now, one of the negatives here, I think, is that the interiors on the tri and quad motor vehicles will be slightly different, but the exterior is not different. So I do think you can spend, $100,000+ and get this sort of build quality. Again, I don't feel like it's acceptable on a $20,000 car, let alone an $80,000 car. But again, if you're spending all that money, yeah, that really starts to get into a point of like, maybe I should go get a different vehicle that feels better built. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion and impression here. So I think there's a lot to love with Gen 2 here. Now, underneath the skin, like I talked about, if you want more information on that, go check out of spec reviews. Kyle has interviewed all of the engineers there to figure out what's new on Gen 2. And honestly, it's not new headlights and taillights. There's a lot underneath this vehicle, as well as cameras and wiring and all that craziness that they've changed about this. I just really think it's funny. You're driving down the road, you're like, wait, I think that's a Gen 2 R1S. Oh, nope, that was a Gen 1. And then one goes by and you're like, oh my God, that was a Gen 2. But it's one of those things you have to know to figure out what it is. So it's a weird refresh to me. I really expected them to come out and like really redesign this thing to be like, dang, you got the new Gen 2, but it's like a .5 instead of a 0.1 to 0.2. I don't know, just a little strange to me. But overall feelings here, lots of good, and the bad is kind of bad in my impression. So Thanks so much for watching another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. What cars do you want to see a build quality review next? Bye-bye.